let's get the text focused as well. Here's the right version. Yes. That I didn't have the right spot. Just have to hold on. There we go. Until I back it up and bind it up. Okay, well, that is up and running. You just get the YouTube monitoring panel in place, and then we will be good to go. One more click, click, and other little bits of technology. All right. No, 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 no. There we go. Okay. Put that down on the page. Good morning, everyone, or actually, I guess it is technically good afternoon. Thank you for joining me as we continue our discussion of Jewish beliefs about the end of days. We have been working our way through the Talmud for the last couple weeks, in particular, the section of Talmud that deals with this most extensively known as Sanhedrin, or rather, the 90s in the Sanhedrin section, and the volume of Sanhedrin. Last time we talked more about the status, the way that the transition into the Messianic time might come. The week before, we talked about the resurrection of the dead. As we have gone through, though, we have begun to see hints that this time may not be very pleasant, and we were going to see a lot more of that today. And we're also going to, hopefully, begin to look at some of the ideas regarding calculating or figuring out the end, and we will begin that process. Now, I do want to do one little housekeeping job before we get going, which is to let you all know that I'm going to be away for a little bit, and the class will resume in July. July 8th, I believe, will be the first class back. So you're just going to have to watch the reruns or hopefully study the texts on your own. But I'll be back on July 8th, and we will pick up where we left off. So let's go ahead and see what we can finish today, and then I'll leave you with much to consider. Rav Yehuda says, that Rav says, sorry, I know I hate to interrupt myself, but I got to sometimes. I don't think I've mentioned it in this particular class, but you may have all noticed that there is a very common style of introduction in the Talmud. So-and-so or Rabbi so-and-so says that Rabbi so-and-so says. So this is trying to establish a Masorah, a chain of attribution. On the one hand, Judaism is very, very adamant that when you have learned something from a particular teacher, you should always say it in their name, that this is both honorific as well as trying to ascertain the proper line of teaching, because that can be very important when trying to reconcile counter teachings or potential gaps in the tradition. But two, it is incredibly important because the Talmud, like all Jewish tradition, values equally the insights of individuals, the creativity of a person to interpret, to understand, to analyze, to use logic, to figure out new and novel ideas from within our texts. But equally, we also value the continuation, the holding on to of the traditions. So there is a reason why I always try to bring primary sources from earlier times. It's because our ancestors have a history of always bringing primary sources from their earlier times. This establishes that we are not just making things up, but that we do have something that we are basing this on, and having these attributions is critical. If you ever hear somebody teaching something in Judaism and they don't bother telling you where it came from, no footnotes, no citations, no bibliography, no quotes, but just Judaism says blah, 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 well, then you want to take that with an enormous sized grain of salt. They may, in fact, be perfectly right, and that's well and good. but they could also be mistaken or sometimes deliberately trying to pass off their own personal ideas as though it were universal. And as we've seen from our many different discussions, calling something universal, unless it is a fairly general idea, is pretty hard. We've got a wide range of opinions already in this section, and that is fairly typical across many different aspects of Jewish thought. Okay, so Rav Yehuda says that Rav says, that's his chain of tradition, Sennacherib, that was the Assyrian emperor, the one who destroyed the northern kingdom and laid siege to Jerusalem during the time of Hezekiah and Isaiah. Sennacherib, the wicked, came upon them with 45,000 men, sons of kings, sitting in carriages of gold. And with them were consorts and prostitutes, and with 80,000 warriors, each wearing a coat of mail, and with 60,000. All right, so Rav is essentially giving a tradition of what was Sennacherib's army like. And this is meant to be a very impressive array. This is a huge army. That, of course, is important because Sennacherib does ultimately lose, at least in our telling. He has his own palaces, which can now be seen in the British Museum, where he claims victory. But since Jerusalem, Hezekiah, and the Jewish people survived, and that was our primary goal, I think we can rightly claim victory on our side. So Sennacherib had this massive army, but he was not able to overpower or destroy us. And likewise, when the four kings came upon Abraham to wage war in the land of Canaan, take a look at chapter 14, Bereshit, they brought forces of that magnitude, meaning they had also a huge army, a very impressive array. And likewise, the forces of that magnitude are destined to come with Gog and Magog in the ultimate war. So now you see why this is being taught in this context, that we are talking about the future battle will also be against an enemy of impressive array. Of course, there will still be ultimate victory, but the impressiveness of the enemy is, well, very important. As we're going to see, this section of the Talmud deals with rather darker interpretations of what that future time might look like, and that is going to engender a certain amount of hopelessness. And when talking about the enemy, likewise, we might feel hopeless if we thought they were too many. But by bringing traditions of previous enemies who were enormous and outnumbering us in multiple magnitudes, and yet we won, well, that will give us a little bit more hope to imagine that this will not be the end of us, but rather the beginning of a new era. It was taught in a Braita, another source. The length of the camp of Sennacherib was 400 parsangs, and the width of the necks of his horses side by side was 40 parsangs. So massive column, huge block of people marching along or encampment. The total number of soldiers in his camp was 2,600, 10,000, meaning 260,000 minus one. All right, so we've got this idea of massive numbers and being used here really stylistically to remind us of what we have faced in the past in order that we have courage for the future. But continuing on just a little ways further, Rav Nachman said to Rav Yitzchak, so here there is a discussion between two sages rather than transmitted. Have you heard when the sons of giants, Bar Nifle, will come? So this is based off the idea of Nephilim as being giants from the earlier days and formidable foes. Rav Yitzchak said to him, who is the son of giants, right? So what are you talking about? Rav Nachman said to him, he is the Messiah. All right. Some of you, I'm sure, just had your jaw drop. Why would we say that the Messiah is a descendant of the Nephilim, of these gigantic warriors of the past? Well, Rabbi Yitzchak asked him, do you call the Messiah son of giants? Right? Where are you getting this idea that this is the title we would use? Rav Nachman said to him, yes, as it is written, on that day I will establish the tabernacle of David, the Sukkot David, that is fallen, Hanofelet. All right, so that is why the Messiah is called Bar Nifli. So what do we got here? Well, we have a little bit of a rabbinic pun. And this is a normal way to make a point or introduce a topic in something that will be catchy and memorable. So the idea of the Sukkot David HaNofelet, the Sukkah of David, the Tabernacle of David has fallen. That is a common messianic term that's used in our teachings. We use it, for example, in Birkat Hamazon when it is Sukkot, since we're in a Sukkah exactly at that point. And the idea being that the household of David had fallen, meaning the lineage of David had been kicked out of their monarchy. And the play on the word here, Hanofelet, well, Hanofelet comes from the same root as Nephilim. So what they're saying here is that the son of David, meaning the Messiah, will come from the fallen, meaning the fallen Sukkah, the fallen lineage. And when he comes, he will be like a giant. So it is not saying that he is literally a giant. It's not literally trying to make any attribution about his ancestry. It instead is saying that it may be fallen now, but when he arises, it will be like a mighty giant. And of course, that will lead us to victory. Now, onward, Rabbi Yitzchak said to him that this is what Rabbi Yochanan says, meaning, okay, as long as we're talking about the theme of the Messiah and the Messiah rising up, being giant-like, etc., let's talk about the Messiah and let's talk about the time of the Messiah. During the generation in which the Messiah, son of David, comes, Torah scholars decrease. And as for the rest of the people, their eyes fail with sorrow and grief, and troubles increase. And the harsh decrees will be introduced before the first passes, the second comes quickly. All right, so Rabbi Yochanan gives a rather dire warning that you may talk about the Messiah rising up like a giant from the fallen Sukkah of David, but understand that during the generation when this happens, things are going to be so bad that the number of people who are devoted to Torah will decrease, and that everybody else will be sorrowful and will be full of grief, and there will be troubles. And in fact, the harsh decrees, which would be the proclamations of the empire that were subjugating us, before the first had even been processed, the second one came that was even worse. And so there was never even a chance to catch our breath from all the disasters that were happening. Not exactly a happy thought. So whereas Rav Nachman began with this idea of this giant Messiah, we're now seeing the counter argument of, yeah, giant he may be, but the times that he comes to will be horrid. Now, with regards to that time, we have a Breita, which is again another section of early rabbinic teaching, which was not codified in the Mishnah, but was still transmitted. The sages taught in a Breita with regard to the 7-year period, that is to say, the sabbatical cycle, during which the Messiah, son of David, comes. Right, so there will be, well, there always are a Shemitah cycle, a 7-year cycle, and during that cycle, that the Messiah shows up, the years of that cycle will have certain characteristics. Now, this is sort of the first real discussion of signs that someone might be looking for, of omens that you might be watching for in anticipation of the Messiah. Now, hold on to that thought because it's going to be quickly challenged in just a second. But we do have this text, and so as always in Judaism, even things that are eventually cast aside are still brought to be discussed in order that we know why they should be cast aside. And if someone else brings it up, we can say, yes, we've already discussed that, we already understand it, and no, that is not the right way to understand the situation. So during the sabbatical year, what's it going to look like? Or during the sabbatical cycle, the 7-year cycle, what's it going to be like? During the first year, this verse will be fulfilled. And I will cause it to rain upon one city and cause it not to rain upon another city. All right, so this is a fickle drought, a drought that is only happening in some places and not others, which of course is extremely abnormal. During the second year of that period, arrows of famine will be shot, indicating that there will be famine only in certain places. All right, so now we're getting a harsher situation, because you will have pockets of famine in different places. During the third year, there will be a great famine, meaning more inclusive of the entire area, and men, women, children, the pious, and men of action will die, and the Torah is forgotten by those who study it. All right, third year, it's absolutely a nightmare. Not only do we have this famine, which is killing people, but we also have the idea that the people who die it will be an indiscriminate death. This is not just, oh, the bad people get hurt. No, this famine is the type that is going to hurt many people. We talked about this in my class some time ago when we discussed suffering, that suffering can come to many different people, not only those that have earned it by some definition of that word. And most importantly, and echoing that we're going to see later on, the Torah will be forgotten. This idea of Torah ignorance, of Torah being abandoned, is one that comes up again and again in many of the rabbinic ideas that will be part of the preface to the coming of the Messiah. During the fourth year, there will be plenty, but not great plenty, meaning during the fourth year, things will begin to get better, but it's not completely done yet. During the fifth year, there will be great plenty, and they will eat and drink and rejoice, and the Torah will return to those who study it. So now we're seeing the beginning of good days. And during the sixth year, heavenly voices will be heard. And during the sabbatical year, meaning the final year of that cycle, wars, meaning the war of Gog and Magog, will be waged involving the Jewish people. And during the year after the conclusion of the sabbatical year, the son of David will come. All right, so the conclusion to the cycle, of course, is the arrival of the Messiah. Now, you will note that this particular telling puts the arrival of the Messiah as something that happens after the battle between Gog and Magog. You will also see that the arrival of the Messiah comes after a resurgence of Torah study. So that is at variance with other traditions, which put the Messiah as one who will lead the resurgence of study or lead the people during the conflict with Gog. So this is not a universal opinion. Always remember that anything we read in the Talmud is not inherently universal just because it's in the Talmud, because Talmud contains multiple opinions, especially on more theological matters like this. All right, now, that being said, it's still going to come under attack immediately for different reasons. Rav Yosef said, haven't there been several sabbatical cycles during which events transpired in that manner? And nevertheless, the Messiah did not come. All right, so Rav Yosef points out, excuse me, we've had famines. We have had wars. We have had all of these kinds of things. We've had loss of Torah, resurgence of Torah. This description of the 7-year cycle is not unique. Now, Abaye is going to retort, have the phenomenon, right? Really? Have they actually transpired? During the 6th year, heavenly voices, and during the sabbatical year, there was wars. Have those transpired? Right. So Abaye is trying to say, yes, you've probably experienced many of these aspects, but that doesn't mean you've experienced all of them. And furthermore, have all these phenomena transpired in the order in which they were listed in the Braita? Meaning, can you actually say that they happened with rain here but not there, famine here but not there, famine everywhere and losing Torah, returning of a little bit of plenty, returning of great plenty, returning of Torah, voices from heaven, then the wars? How can you be sure that this is the precise version? That if something happened that was slightly different, then that's not it. Now, Abaye's retort here may sound like it's coming purely to support the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 sort of benchmarks or signs that would happen during the 7-year cycle in order to reinforce the validity of that proclamation. But what he is also doing simultaneously is ensuring that people, one, don't lose hope. Just because they've seen things like this before doesn't mean that we've missed our shot. It means that the real one hasn't happened yet because the real one is a little different. And two, don't think every time you have bad situation, it rained here but not there, and then the next year there was famine here but not there. Don't think that means we're in the 7-year cycle. It's happening, people. The Messiah's coming in just 4 years. No, that's not the way this works. These events, apart from the War of Gog and the heavenly voices, are the kind of things that are going to happen multiple times, unfortunately, between now and the coming of the Messiah. Therefore, when we see them happening, we should not immediately jump to the conclusion that this must be the cycle of the coming of the Messiah. Instead, it should be, wow, this is terrible. Let's make sure that we don't starve to death. Let's make sure we don't lose Torah. Let's make sure that we can avoid wars and all of those things, because these are typical occurrences in world history and ones that we should protect ourselves from, rather than imagine that this is necessarily leading to the coming of the Messiah right now. And certainly these are not the kind of things that we should ever accelerate. Far too often I hear people these days having the idea that somehow we can help the Messiah along by making things worse. God forbid, that is not the pattern that we take. Okay, and let's go ahead though and continue with a similar concept. And the verse states that your enemies taunted, Lord, that they have taunted the footsteps of your anointed, taking here from Psalm 89. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Yehuda says, during the generation that the son of David comes, the hall of assembly of the sages will be designated for prostitution, and the Galilee will be destroyed, and Gavlan, which is Bashan, will be desolate, and the residents of the border who flee the neighboring Gentiles will circulate from city to city and will receive no sympathy. The wisdom of scholars will diminish, and sin-fearing people will be despised. And the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog, meaning in its impudence and shamelessness, and truth will be lacking, as it is stated, and the truth is lacking, nederet, and he who departs from evil is negated, taking from Isaiah 59. Okay, so Rabbi Yehuda is trying to interpret this verse about the taunting of the enemy and the taunting of the footsteps of the anointed, which is a oblique reference to the Messiah, as saying that the situation will be horrid, not just horrid in the sense of famine and drought, but it will be horrid in terms of the character of this this time period. It will be shameful. It will be shameless, which is always ironic that those two things often go together, so that the places that used to be for study will now be used as places for prostitution, that the places that were the most productive and fertile will now be laid waste, and that people who have been on the border who are retreating inland will find no help, no sympathy among the other people in the country. People have often shown little sympathy for those first affected by a problem when that problem catches up to those second affected. So this is indeed a dire statement about the character of the people in that time. Likewise, the diminishment of wisdom, the loss of those that are afraid of sinning, those that have that self-control, which instead will turn into the face of a dog. And I love dog faces, but this is an idiom meaning that they will be shameless and just do whatever they feel like and will not feel embarrassed or shamed for what they do. And obviously the departure of truth. Now, if you wanted to be creative, you can apply a description like this to many different situations. We could talk about how the Israelis who live in the north are driven away from the border by the attacks by Hezbollah, and we can argue whether or not they have received enough sympathy to qualify or not qualify for this statement. We could talk about the idea of people being impudent and shameful, in multiple generations throughout our history. We can talk about the idea of what constitutes destruction in the North or not. And again, if we try to use this as a template to interpret the events that we either see or are seeing sometime in the future, well, you can make it fit just about anything, and you can make it not fit just about anything. So these are not here. The statements of what the future will look like, what the footsteps of the Messiah will be like, are not here to give us a roadmap. They are here to help sort of curtail our understanding of what that period will be, that it's not going to be just peace and rainbows, or at least not necessarily. That this can be a time of great strife, of great difficulty, and that we should be prepared for that, and yet nonetheless still hope for the coming of the Messiah, because all of these problems can happen at any time, as we just saw earlier, but at the time they happen in conjunction with the arrival of the Messiah, at least that will be the last time. At least this will be the final moment. So we can take solace in understanding that there will be an end to this cycle, without becoming obsessed with identifying which sign has or has not yet occurred, or when it might occur. All right, hopefully that's clear. Let's go ahead and move forward again in the text. It is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Nehorai says, during the generation in which the son of David comes, youths will humiliate elders, and elders will stand in deference before youths. And a daughter will rebel against her mother, and a bride against her mother-in-law, and the face of the generation will be like the face of a dog, and a son will not be ashamed before his father. All right, so what is he trying to say? Well, again, it's another retelling of what we just saw from Rabbi Yehuda, the idea being that the culture, the style of civilization will be flipped on its head. Everything will be upside down. That the elders who normally are meant to receive respect, they will be humiliated by the young, whereas the young are the ones who are supposed to be embarrassed when they make mistakes that their elders are trying to help them correct and live a better life to avoid. So that there will be this inversion. And likewise, the role of the daughter against the mother, the bride against the mother-in-law, this was a standard order for how a household would be run. And if you flip this, well, then you are putting somebody who is less qualified and less knowledgeable over somebody that is more qualified, more knowledgeable, and that's going to create problems. And under all of this, of course, is this shamelessness that will permeate society. Now, as you can imagine, there are many people who point to passages like this and then point to our modern society and say, look, we have a youth-focused society. Everybody idolizes the young, and clearly that is fulfilling this. We must be near the time of the coming of the Messiah. Well, I hate to break it to you, but people have complained about the youth not giving enough respect to the elders since before this was written. This is a common problem in many communities, and it's also a problem that is not always an actual problem. So we may talk about our youth-focused society, but if you look at the people who are in power, who control the laws and the wealth of our communities, well, most of our senators are 70 or older. So it's not as though the youth are the ones who are actually in charge. Yes, they may make some embarrassing and obnoxious videos from time to time. They may not show the proper respect and deference. They may not get up on the bus to give their seat to somebody who's older and more in need. But that has been a problem going all the way back since the beginning of recorded time. So this isn't trying to say, look at the structure of your current social order, and then you'll know when the Messiah is about to come. This is trying to say, one of the characteristics that we face all the time, which is this inversion of proper respect, will also be present at the time the Messiah comes. And this will, of course, be reconciled, that it'll be fixed at that time. So we can look forward to eventually having this set right. Also, it is taught in a Braita that Rabbi Nehemiah says, during the generation that the son of David comes, arrogance will proliferate, and the cost of living will corrupt people, so they will engage in deceit. All right, again, are we going to say the cost of living is so high now? Oh no, it's so bad. It was worse during the Great Depression. It was worse during the panics in the 1800s. Let's not get too crazy of trying to write our own time into these texts. The vine will produce its fruit, and nevertheless the wine will be costly, and the entire Gentile monarchy will be converted to heresy, and there will be no rebuke. This Breita supports the opinion of Rabbi Yitzchak, as Rabbi Yitzchak says, the son of David will not come until the entire kingdom will be converted to heresy. Okay, so again, we are being given a description of the period leading up to the arrival of the Messiah that is putting all of the worst elements that our ancestors have suffered at different times sort of all together in one giant, really, really, really bad time. So that not only do you have the impotence, but you also have the cost of living crippling people, and that is promoting worse behavior and causing more trouble in society, that even though there is plenty, there will still be want, and that people will, of course, be leaving the right and true path and going after heretical ideas. Not great. Now, how do we prove this? Because so far we haven't had a citation, and like I said earlier, we like citations. Rava says, what is the verse from which this statement is derived? It is the verse, Leviticus 13. It is all turned white. He is ritually pure. All right, so not an apparent connection. So look at the commentary and let me explain. One is a leper and ritually impure only if he has a leprous mark. As I've said in many other classes, but for those who haven't joined me in those, I will remind, when we talk about leprosy here, it is an English convention as a description of tzara'at. Tzara'at is a spiritual disease described in detail in the book of Leviticus. It is not identical to the modern situation known as leprosy, for which there is wonderful, good medical treatment, and for which one is not treated as ritually impure. But we'll use the term leprosy because that's the one used here, but understand we're not talking about the medical condition that we all know. All right. So when somebody actually has this leprosy, this tzara'at, then when you see the mark, then the person can on the skin, then the person can be classified as a leper, as a metzora. However, if every part of the skin, the entire body is covered in the what would be seen as a leprous mark, then they're not. This is one of those great paradoxes, which reminds us, of course, of that we're not dealing with a medical phenomenon here, but a spiritual one, that if the leprosy is only in one spot, ritual impurity. If the leprosy is everywhere, which you would probably think would be worse, then in fact, they are not suffering from tzara'at. They're suffering from some other problem, but not tzara'at with all of its attached stringencies and difficulties. So, how does this apply to our texts of gloom and doom that we've had so much? Similarly, the world will be redeemed only when the Jewish people reach their lowest point, meaning that it has to be 100% covered with all of the bad stuff for it to then become a state where it can be pure, where it can be made purified. So it's going to get a whole lot worse before it gets better. That's what this passage from Vayikra, from Leviticus, is coming to tell us. The sages taught in a Breita. The verse states, "For the Lord shall judge his people and atone for his servants, when he sees that their power is gone and there is none shut up or left." Deuteronomy 32. From the phrase, "their power is gone," it is derived that the son of David will not come until informers will proliferate. Informers were a huge problem for much of our history. An informer was somebody that would snitch on their fellow Jews to the foreign government that was occupying and controlling our lives, whether it be in the land of Israel, and they were snitching, well, in this case, to the Romans, or whether it be in some part of Europe where they would be snitching to somebody else. Now, snitching is an important word. Snitching usually implies you did something wrong that was actually wrong. But in Judaism, this was often where somebody had done something that was against the imperial decree, for example, circumcise their child when it was not being permitted, and somebody in the community went and informed on them and caused a great deal of trouble, if not execution, for one of their fellow members of the community. So obviously, informers have a very, very special place in our anger and our fight for trying to maintain ourselves under these oppressive conditions. And talking about them proliferating, of course, is really a sign of just how bad things can be, that we're not only are we being subjugated, but we are also not even being able to stay together, to work together to avoid that subjugation. Alternatively, and yes, there are oftentimes alternative interpretations that will come side by side, and the text is not telling you which one is the right interpretation, merely trying to generate a deeper understanding by presenting multiple opinions. The Messiah will not come until the number of students of Torah diminishes. After all, where is power? Does power come from our ability to maintain some cohesiveness and an authority within ourselves? Does power come from our Torah? You decide. Both of those are perfectly adequate and acceptable, and most importantly, illustrative interpretations. Alternatively, because we're not done yet, the Messiah will not come until the pruta will cease on the purse. A pruta was the smallest denomination of coin. Think of it like a penny for modern value. And the idea here being that we are completely impoverished. So now the power that is gone is an economic power that is gone. And that is when it will be bad. And of course, if you still have a pruta, well, you should look on the bright side. At least you still have a pruta. It could be worse. Alternatively, number 4, the Messiah will not come until they despair from the redemption. As it is stated, and there is none shut up or left, the end half of that verse from Deuteronomy. So the idea here is that if you want to know when the Messiah will come, the Messiah will only come when we stop having hope that the Messiah will come, which is a terrible paradox to put into the minds of a people that are hoping for the Messiah. I mean, are we trying to tell people to stop hoping because that will make it come faster? Can you consciously choose to give up hope and forget to believe that this is a potential? Well, if you're asking those questions, you're in luck. The Talmud asks them too. This is as in that practice of Rabbi Zera, who, when he would find sages who were engaging in discussions about the coming of the Messiah, said to them, "Please, I ask of you, do not delay his coming by calculating the end of days." As we learn in a Braita, there are 3 matters that come only by means of diversion of attention from those matters. And these are the Messiah, the lost item, and a scorpion. All right, if you don't understand the idiom of diverting your attention, this is the equivalent of a watched pot never boils. That if you're focused on it, it's not going to happen. If you're focused on finding a lost item, you're not going to find it, but then when you stop looking for it, boom, there it is. Right? When you least expect it, you'll find it. I don't have too much experience with scorpions. There were some where I was growing up, but they didn't bother us too much. But apparently the idea also is that if you're looking for scorpions, you're not going to see them. But the moment you let your guard down, boom, there's a scorpion. And of course, the Messiah. That if you are constantly calculating about the Messiah, if you are constantly focused on the Messiah, then the Messiah is not going to magically appear, but rather when you turn your attention away, that is what will create the opportunity for the Messianic era. All right, now, how do we actually do that last part in practice? Because to say that we need to divert our attention from the Messiah seems contradictory to what we have in our Siddur, which remember is what we began this course with. In the Siddur, pretty much on every page, there is a reference to our hope for salvation, for redemption, if not an explicit statement specifically about the house of David and the restoration of the monarchy under the Messiah. And even if it's not every page, it's about every other page. And that would seem to be going against what Rabbi Zera is saying, or that final opinion here that the Messiah will only come when we have despaired of redemption. Are we needlessly delaying the arrival of the Messiah by keeping our hope alive? All right. The answer to that, of course, is no. That what this is trying to do here is ride a very fine tightrope of human psychology, that we need to continue to understand that redemption is possible, that redemption could occur, but to not have a fixation, obsession, or myopic view that the Messiah is coming right here, right now, that focused on the idea of it's imminent, that the fixation on the idea of the arrival of the Messiah, rather than on the general concept that redemption is possible, is what we are seeing attention here. So we keep hope alive, we keep the idea alive, but we diminish our expectation. We do not drive ourselves into a frenzy, believing that the Messiah is here or is imminently going to arrive. And indeed, historically, we have found that that balance works best. That when we completely despair, we face utter destruction and ruin. But when we whip ourselves up into a frenzy, imagining that the Messiah is just around the corner, or that I've already met him, and his name's Shabbatai Tzvi, or one of the other many fake messiahs, then we are led into horrible catastrophes. This tension isn't easy, because we want the Messiah and we want redemption. We can see that the world is broken, and even though many of the descriptions that we have looked at today talk about the time before the arrival of the Messiah being especially bad, we know things could be especially bad even without the Messiah. Like we talked about, there's been many 7-year cycles when lots of bad stuff happened. So don't tell me that that's what the Messiah is going to look like, because that looks like a Tuesday. Well, we know that, and so we keep hope alive that indeed redemption can come. But we don't fixate on when redemption will come or must come. We focus on what Torah has asked us to do, on how we are meant to live, on what each day should look like for us, regardless of what happens tomorrow. And with that balance, we are well served. It has allowed us to develop our communities, to maintain our culture and our faith, and to continue to find greater wisdom in how life is meant to be lived. Because remember, when the Messiah comes, we will still live life. And knowing better and better how that life should be, well, that is something that is our primary purpose, and something that we can engage in, albeit to a more limited degree than after the Messiah comes, but still, as much as possible, we can engage in living, learning and living that good life right here, right now. And let the fixation of the Messiah's arrival not dwell on us, not be our fixation. All right. We're going to stop here because I didn't want to begin the new section before I had to go away for a while. So once again, I will remind everybody, we will resume this class on July 8th when I'm able to get back to it. In the meantime, please look up these sources, check some of the other commentary, read some of the amazing books, look through the Siddur and find those references, and allow yourself to have that hope. And more importantly, use that hope to improve what you are doing right here, right now, for you, for your family, for your community, for the world, for its own sake. We don't act only for the purpose of the coming of the Messiah. We act because this is why God created us. With that, I will wish you all a fond farewell and see you, well,